But pound this first.
Right now. Welcome to Solvang City Council.
I'm Audrey Smith. You're Audrey Smith,
I'm Audrey Smith,
Mayor for the day,
Mayor for the day,
and I'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
and I'd like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance
Oh, at 6:31.
at 6:31.
Here's the flag right here.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe ask her to take roll call.
What?
Would you please take roll call?
Would you please take roll call?
Councilmember Infante,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Arona,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona,
Here.
and Mayor Brown.
Here.
Thank you. And Mayor for the day.
I want to thank Audrey for being Mayor of the Day. She'll have a big tour on the 20th with all her staff, and I'd like to appreciate her coming up. Let me give you a presentation. This is the Solvang pin, the city pin, and I'm going to let you have this. We can put it on your sweater. Okay. We have a medic here somewhere. There you go. And I want to thank you very much
It's a big one.
and congratulations for being Mayor of the Day. Audrey Smith, y'all. Are you comfortable? This is great. So we're gonna move on. Do you want to run the rest of the meeting, or you'd like me to do that?
I would if I knew what happened.
You're welcome to sit with your mom and tell us if we're doing it right or not. You mind?
I don't really care.
You like it here? Okay, let me get a chair. I'll join you. Okay, you ready to go? Okay, thank you. We don't have any proclamations today, so we'll go to the next items, is the Office of the City Clerk. May we have that presentation, please? Okay, let me take my notes here.
So by way of introduction, if you recall, when I started almost 2 years ago now, I started having the various department heads provide an overview of kind of what they do for the council to be aware of it, as well as our residents. And so it's finally the city clerk's turn, and she is here tonight to talk about the office of the city clerk.
Turn your mic on, yeah.
So this is the presentation for the Office of the City Clerk. The city clerk is one of the oldest public service professions dating back to ancient times and can be traced back to Athenian democracy. And my transitions are slow. There they go. The title municipal clerk can be traced back to 1272 in the Corporation of Old London. During the Middle Ages, when scholarship and writing were limited to the clergy, clerk came to mean scholar, especially one who could read, write, and thus serve as notary, secretary, accountant, and recorder. And the office of the clerk was the first established by early colonists in America. The California Constitution of 1849 established county offices of the clerk, district attorney, sheriff, coroner, and supervisor. And the California Government Code, Section 36501, establishes the office of the city clerk. So what does the clerk do? So basically, the clerk is somewhat of the air traffic controller. Clerks have one of the most multifaceted jobs in local government. Not only are they responsible for supporting governance, but they are also tasked with overseeing record keeping, driving public transparency, and ensuring compliance with a plethora of evolving laws and regulations. There's a lot to balance, and when obstacles present themselves, the role only becomes more complicated. So what kind of traffic are we driving here in the office of the clerk? Well, the responsibilities of the clerk is the local official who administers the democratic process, such as elections, access to city records, and all legislative actions, ensuring transparency to the public. The city clerk acts as a compliance officer for federal, state, and local statutes, including the Political Reform Act, the Brown Act, the Public Records Act. And the city clerk manages public inquiries and relationships and arranges for ceremonial and official functions. As an elections official, the city clerk administers federal, state, and local procedures through which local government representatives are selected. The city clerk assists candidates in meeting their legal responsibilities before, during, and after the election. From elections pre-planning to certification of election results and filing of final campaign and disclosure documents, the city clerk manages the process which forms the foundation of our democratic system of government. As a legislative administrator, the city clerk plays a critical role in the decision-making process of the local legislator. And as key staff or city council members, the city clerk prepares the legislative agenda, verifies legal notices have been posted or published, and completes the necessary arrangements to ensure an effective meeting. The city clerk is entrusted with the responsibility of recording the decisions which constitute the building blocks for our representative government. As a records manager, the city clerk oversees yet another legislative process, the preservation and protection of the public record. By statute, the city clerk is required to maintain and index the minutes, ordinances, and resolutions adopted by the legislative body. City clerk also ensures that other municipal records are readily accessible to the public. The public record under the conservatorship of the city clerk provides fundamental integrity to the structure of our democracy. So what this looks like is the control tower managing flights coming in, going out, parked, and on their way to who knows where, from who knows where. And it's dizzying. Complex and ever-changing legislation, clerks must be aware of any changes to federal, state, and local laws to ensure that their offices and communities remain compliant. However, these regulations, particularly the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, and Government in the Sunshine Act, are often tough to understand and seem to change all the time. Still, the stakes are high. Failure to comply can result in fines, lawsuits, and fractured public trust. So what this looks like from staff's point of view is the city clerk is talking about law, requirements, rules, standards, governance, regulations, transparency, and policies, and it translates as a T-Rex looking for someone to chomp on and yell at. What the city clerk is really responsible for is, in this city and in many jurisdictions, contract management, creation or editing of city agreements, contracts, and other legal documents, routes for signatures, archives, and monitors for termination, not to exceed and insurance requirements, contractor insurance oversight, municipal code updates, MATI Act, advisory body recruitment, enterprise publication, Levine Act, Public Records Act training, Brown Act training, ethics training, conflict of interest biennial code review, agenda posting of outside agencies, update FPPC Forms 806, administers oath of office and certifies copies of official city records, receives and opens bids for city projects and purchases, receives and processes liability claims filed against the city, and herds and walks cats on demand. So our next animation is Houston. We have an opportunity. So, with the designation of certified municipal clerk, there is one extra step or safeguard that the city has within this clerk and future clerks once I've gone on my way. There are several designations. One is the certified municipal clerk, of which I am. And our training goes back to the origins and formation of social and political systems, education, law and procedures, local government finance, codification, technology in the clerk's office, team group decision-making, meeting administration, records management, general law, negotiation and assessment skills, writing skills, ethics of the profession, diversity in organizations, the Political Reform Act, recall initiative and referendum, mechanics of conducting election technology and current issues, public speaking and presentations, city clerk's role in emergency and crisis management, and communication skills and management skills. And with that, do you have any questions?
How does one person do all of that?
You'll have to ask the local air traffic controllers, because that's how we try and do it, and why we look like we do at the end of the day.
I was just going to say thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, thank you,
So appreciated.
thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Did you have any questions, Audrey?
No.
Okay, now, thank you very much for that. I understand that you have a curfew, but you could veto that. Do you have homework tonight?
No, I already did it.
You did all your homework? Okay. You're in the 3rd grade at Solvang? Okay. Do you know what veto means? I was going to say you could veto the curfew, but I think you better go look up the word first at home and see if that's appropriate. Would you mind? You're mayor for the day. You can pretty much do what you want. Yeah. But I think your mom wanted you to move on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, ice cream, yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming, and I'll let you go to your mom. And Audrey, it's been a pleasure. We look forward to seeing you in a week or two on the 20th to take the tour. And I know you're going to do great. You'll finish the 3rd grade just without any problem. It's the rest of them you have to worry about. Okay? All right. Thank you. She was taking that job seriously, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, you're very welcome. Will you come again? Will you come again? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. Okay. Now we're going to public communications for non-agenda and consent items. Would you read that, please, for us?
At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comments first.
Okay, first we have Michael Baker. I'd like you to please, even though I've read your name, please introduce yourself and speak into the microphone. And please adhere to your 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Baker. I have the honor of being the CEO for United Boys and Girls Club Santa Barbara County. And I'm here to give an update on our program here in Solvang, which is thriving. Last year at this time, we had 50 members. This year, we're at 70 already. And we're seeing that number going up every single day. We are also averaging about 20, almost 20 children a day participating. We're also doing what we call recess programming on the school campus. So we send staff during the day from our organization to go run activities for the children on the school playground, structured activities, which is just a wonderful opportunity to interact with the children as well. I will tell you that also, in addition, most of our parents who participate in our program, they don't have the luxury of, they aren't working here in Solvang. Most of them are working maybe in Santa Barbara or up maybe Goleta or even maybe Santa Maria. So they're on the road for a good 30, 35, 40 minutes to get home to and from work. When the school bell rings at the end of the day, we know from national statistics, unfortunately, that the number one time when juvenile crime happens in the United States is not Friday night, it's not Saturday night, it's 3 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And that's why it's important to have organizations like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, Girls Inc., there for children. We're very proud here that we're on a school campus, and the relationship that we have has been phenomenal. In addition to that, I will tell you that this past year, when the schools are, even when the schools are closed for breaks, we're open at the Boys and Girls Club. We're operating out of there. So during the summertime, we're open, full day service. We charge $15 a day for a child to go to our program. Very reasonable. In addition to that, that being said, we don't turn anybody away because of their economic situation. I can tell you that just this past year, we gave out over $4,600 in scholarships. When you figure it's $15 a day, it's a lot of scholarships that have been given out. And those are families that are desperately in need of the support of the Boys and Girls Club. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your continued support, and hopefully look forward to seeing you at the club for a tour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis Beebe is next, and on deck is Al Cortez.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for your service to the community. I am Dennis Beebe from Solvang. I'm going to speak to an item on your consent agenda, which is your eventual approval, disapproval of a contract to Rincon to conduct environmental studies and EIR for Wildwood, a fairly controversial project. I am, first of all, disappointed that it's in the consent agenda because, like everything else involving public communications, you can't engage with the public who would like to. We can only transmit. So that's what I'm here to do. I've looked at the packet fairly well, and I've got a few questions. You've seen some of my questions since I sent you an email with the initial questions that occurred to me, but I've conjured up a few more. I don't think the contractor, Rincon, has a good understanding of the scope of the project based upon the packet. For example, his last proposal update, oh, excuse me, no, that's not correct. I jumped between the contractor and the applicant. The applicant's last proposal update stated that he had performed an environmental survey and evaluation of the entire, quote, project site, unquote. And that was defined as being 5 parcels, 2 of which the applicant owned, 3 of which were the easement. But Rincon only proposes to do an evaluation of 2 parcels owned by the applicant. The scope isn't adequate. Exhibit A, which is before you, fails to identify all the parcels involved in this project. So I'm concerned that the scope of the environmental contract is inadequate. Exhibit A lists 12 technical studies which will get a peer review by Rincon. I looked in the technical studies which were submitted in the latest application, which was November, the end of November, and I didn't see these 12 studies. I have submitted what I didn't see to Raphael. So I don't think this contract is ready for prime time, and I hope you will ask appropriate questions to try to resolve my concerns before you proceed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Al Cortez, and after him is Craig Kent.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'd like to ask also some questions about the Rincon contract, which is presently consent item 6D. I know you can't answer my questions, but perhaps some council members might think that they should be asked and answered, and that the council should take the time to discuss such an important contract, rather than just to approve it on the consent agenda because the developer is paying for it. My basic question is, why is a contract of such importance and significance on the consent calendar for approval? It doesn't seem to make much sense to me, and I hope some of the council members will ask some questions about it. For example, the contract is significant, I think, because it will control the conduct of the CEQA environmental review of one of the most impactful of Solvang's proposed developments. And it is perhaps one of the most important determiners of whether or not that development should ultimately be approved. The questions that should be asked are many, too many for me to list, and I'd like to add a little something to what Mr. Beebe said, that just the fact that the proposed contract with Rincon does not include the property that represents 20% of the development that is easement property. It specifically says in the proposal, in the second paragraph of Exhibit A, that the property is 5.48 acres, as shown in the drawings. The property is almost 6.8 acres, about 6.8 acres. And that because it includes almost 1.3 acres, which are the easement property that the developer wants to take for his exclusive use, and it's not an exclusive easement, for a roadway, for retaining walls, for parking, and for other items that he does not own. And I would think that it would be significant to the council members that you would ask, why is that property not included in the contract? For example, if you were buying a house with an easement, would you not want the easement identified in the deed to the property? Well, this deed doesn't identify the easement. And it's basically a problem because it's a contract, and they're bound by the contract. So I think there are so many issues here that you really should put this off for the next meeting.
Thank you.
And put it on the discussion agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I went over.
Craig Kent. And after you is Lansing Duncan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Craig Kent. I'm a Solvang resident. As the previous two speakers said, I hope you'll take the time to review and discuss the details of the item 6D contract to Rincon Engineering. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that the amount of information you have to wade through to deal with all the things you deal with, I've been ghosting it, is a lot. And it takes a lot of my time to wade through the contracts and all the other documents that have led us to this point. So I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of work. And in the vein of trust but verify, I just want to point out that the attachment A estimate has no estimates for geotechnical, traffic, or civil engineering. It's mostly planners. There's some hydrology people, archaeologists, and supervisors, but there are no engineering people. And part of the scope of the work includes traffic and geotechnical assessments, and those should be done by engineers. So I hope that you will dig further into the details of this and make sure that the scope of work and the estimates are inclusive of all of the analyses and engineering assessments that are appropriate for this large project. I would like to close by saying that the developer had to turn in both VMT and LOS traffic assessments. Neither of those address public safety relative to vulnerable roadway users, which are pedestrians and other non-vehicle users. And I only see the VMT analysis covered in the scope of work. And as we've discussed many times here, both the pedestrian health and safety and the traffic impacts of the 200 or so cars that are going to be a consequence of this development are important to that intersection and the residents of Solvang, and actually the whole valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Lansing Duncan. And after him is Steve Martin.
Thank you, council members. My name is Lansing Duncan. Basically, your council needs to pull item 6D from the consent agenda and have staff bring it back to you at a later date with the corrected staff report and CEQA proposal from Rincon. Your staff erred when a builder's remedy pre-application for Site C was accepted without the required signatures of the 18 Solvang residents who own the property under the easement that the developer seeks to use for an essential part of his Wildwood development. The city, since then, has repeatedly sought to ignore or cover up the part of the Wildwood project that's proposed to occur on the easement, and that's what is occurring here tonight. I'm pretty sure that the CEQA analysis for Wildwood has to include the property on which the easement lies. That's why there was heavy equipment digging trenches on Mission Oaks property last year, without notice, I might add. But both your staff report and Rincon's proposal totally omits and ignores the Mission Oaks acreage that Wildwood proposes to develop. The developer proposed to substantially regrade this property owned by others, remove or slowly kill existing oak trees by creating a pond that will drain storm runoff, install a drainage system, and an entry road over steep slopes. This road and parking areas will be located on top of the historic Mission Aqueduct. The fact that this property is not mentioned in the staff report or in Rincon's CEQA proposal makes one wonder whether there will be any environmental review of this part of the development. The fact that it's owned by others is simply an inconvenient truth. This is consistent with the city's head-in-the-sand approach to this project. But when your documents incorporate such egregious errors that threaten to undermine your actions and the adequacy of the CEQA analysis, you might want to rethink that strategy. The cover-up extends to how this item is listed in your agenda. If you look, there are only 2 APNs listed, and we know there are more than that. And there are more than 2 APNs that will be affected by this decision. The first 3 sentences on the first page of the staff report have major errors, misrepresentations, and omissions. The first sentence fails to include the correct number of units and the acreage, since the easement is part of the development. Second sentence, the applicant did revise the number of units to 100, but the latest submission by the applicant did not have 20 affordable units, it had 13 affordable units. It was staff that revised the project from 13 to 20 units. Third sentence, applicable law did not require deeming, quote, the application complete on December 23rd, 2024. In fact, an even-handed application of applicable law would have required deeming the application incomplete. The fact that Rincon's proposal includes a project understanding that omits the property owned by 18 Solvang residents that's proposed to be used by the development should set off alarm bell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Steve Martin.
My name is Steve Martin. I'm a Solvang resident, and good evening, Mayor Brown and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about this. I've been told, and I certainly understand, that this is not a meeting to specifically decide to approve or disapprove of the Wildwood Builders Remedy application. This point has been emphasized to citizens at every step of the process. However, your consent item decision tonight has major implications. Each procedural step in this process impacts the final decision on Wildwood and indeed can be outcome determinative. For example, the CEQA analysis proposed by staff, as has been mentioned, does not state that the easement property is being a material part of the proposed development. Thus, it appears that no environmental analysis is to be required of one, the 1.32 acres proposed by property that consists of 20% of the proposed project, and is where a private road, a paved road rather, and a linear parking lot will be built over an existing drainage ditch. It will not include the evaluation of the noise and visual effects of 84 adjacent residents, of the hundreds of cars and the other vehicles on the easement property. It will not analyze the dangers of accumulation and drainage of water on the impervious easement road running downhill to empty onto Hillside Drive and on Old Mission Drive. It will not analyze the dangers of hundreds of vehicles intersecting the Mission Oaks traffic where the easement road meets Hillside Drive, as well as traffic from Mission Oaks residents seeking to use the joint use parking spaces along the access road. It will not analyze the level of service degradation due to increased traffic at the intersection of Hillside Drive and Old Mission Drive and downstream intersections. Inviting such an incomplete sequel analysis could well decide the fate of Wildwood by setting up an unqualified and improper approval of the project later on. Unjustified, I should say, not unqualified. Speaking of later on, the city may also be boxing itself in and preventing a reasoned objective decision on the project by approving another developer expenditure of up to $250,000 without determining itself or by court declaration whether the pre-application failed to comply with the law governing builder's remedy. Your consent decision tonight opens the door for the developer, city staff, and city attorney to later argue to the council that to deny the developer's pre-application application after all this time and expense would be unfair, and further invite the developer to sue the city, that's us,
Thank you, Steve.
to recover the developer's costs. All these points deserve discussion and action as a future agenda item.
Thank you. Okay, that's the extent of that here in the room. Is there anybody that wanted to speak but didn't have the opportunity? Anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for city manager report.
Yes, good evening. Got a few things. Been talking about the cleanup day that's this Saturday now, 8 a.m. to noon. As far as I know, it is on rain or shine. I did send an email to the my contact, and she has not returned it to me yet, so I don't know for sure. Keep an eye on our website and Facebook page if it is canceled. But right now it is on. Historically, they've done it, but given one of my other announcements is a looming storm that's supposed to land here tomorrow night, Wednesday, and last for a few days, a couple of inches of rain, so that may impact that event, but as of right now, it is on rain or shine. I also wanted to point out that, remind everybody that the grant application period is open, and we are having a kind of an orientation, a mandatory meeting for anybody who intends to apply for a grant from the city in this upcoming budget cycle. There'll be two separate meetings. You only have to attend one of them. The first meeting is Wednesday, the 19th at 5:30 p.m. And the second meeting, that of February, and the second meeting will be Tuesday, March 11th at 3 p.m. Both of those meetings will occur here in the council chambers. Going back to the storm information, tomorrow we're supposed to have gusty west northwest winds kind of all over Wednesday through Friday, likely the strongest storm of the season so far, with a peak on Thursday, widespread moderate to heavy rain, moderate risk of significant flood impacts with heavy rain and high elevation snow. There is a flood watch, I guess, in the burn scar area from the fire that happened up on the hill earlier this summer. And my last announcement is the Solvang Town Hall meeting. It will be in this room tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m. It's an opportunity to get community input on their concerns about our fire readiness. It's a requirement for a grant that we intend to apply to have a community outreach. So we're going to do it here. It's available. You can view it on our YouTube channel, which is the one we use to broadcast the city council meetings, if you can't actually attend. But we'll be here and we'll have quite a bit of information for those who are interested. And that's all I have for now.
Any questions of the manager?
Couple of things, Randy, please. What time does the meeting start tomorrow night?
5:30.
5:30. I was noticing the advanced agenda. I don't see anything on that about emergency preparedness discussions or anything else. I don't know what's going to come out of this community meeting, but at some point in time, this has to come before the council of what we're going to do for an emergency preparedness plan, things of that. The flash vote had the highest number of people that's ever responded to a flash vote, I think, and everybody's concerned about this.
Right.
This is something that I think needs to be on the advanced calendar.
I thought we had something about fire mitigation on the advanced calendar, but yes, the purpose of this meeting, like I said, is we have to have community outreach to be able to apply for a grant that will help pay for Community Wildfire Preparedness Plan, CWPP. If it costs as much as the Recreation Master Plan that's later on the agenda tonight, it would be helpful to have a grant to help pay for it. So that's one of the main reasons why it was kind of brought forward, because I believe the deadline is later in February, at the end of the month, the first part of March, so we don't have a whole lot of time to have that community meeting. And obviously the fires in LA kind of amplified the need for this.
And the potential problems of flooding with the incoming rain that's coming in brings two things. That should be part of the emergency planning, not just fire. It should be flood as well. Second is I had a resident send me a notification that they got from Santa Barbara and from Buellton, but nothing from Solvang with regard to the heavy rains coming in, any concerns that there might be. Do we have anything set up yet to notify the residents if something happens like that?
We are part of the county's Ready SBC alert system.
Right.
So residents are encouraged to apply or give them their email address and or text information, and they will be notified that way.
Using the county
Yes.
SB, yeah.
So it's a county system. I might point out also that the city, right around the time I started, almost 2 years ago now, the city approved the county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. That information is available online. I don't think it's specific enough, but I wasn't involved in that process. So that is something that we are aware of and will be working on. That plan will be updated beginning, I believe it's next year, with the county. And one of the many projects that Olivia is working on.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I did have one. You mentioned it wasn't fire mitigation. I'll think of it later.
Grant application or something? Or the grant application or the other?
Oh, the
things
grant
that-
applications. Thank you. You read my mind, literally. So, regarding the grant applications, are we in a position to ask for a committee for that?
You mean a committee for review?
Review of the applications?
Well, staff will generate an Excel spreadsheet and go through all the qualifications and make sure that they all qualify. And then,
I understand that part. I'm just talking about when all the qualified applicants have it at ad hoc. This is how we've done it in the past. And I don't know if we want to continue that or not, but.
we, last year, we had the finance committee, who was on the budget committee, go over the information, so we can do that. It was my plan, though, to have a joint meeting with the Measure U committee and council, separate from the regular council meeting, to go through the budget process. But it's up to you guys. We can create a finance budget committee if you like.
It's a little bit early. I mean, the grants aren't even due until the end of March.
Understand that,
Yeah.
but I just wanted
Yeah.
to have it out in the open as to what we want to do with regards to
Yeah.
the ad hoc committee or the finance committee.
So is it the wish of the council to have a finance committee?
Well, that's what we don't know. We probably won't discuss it now, but
Yeah.
we'll put it
We
on the
can,
agenda.
we can bring it at the next meeting.
Let's
and
bring
have
it back.
a Conversation about it.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, I mean, the grant applications are due at the end of March.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're incorporated as part of the budget process for next fiscal year.
Yeah, I just
Yep.
want
Yep.
scheduling of opportunities for those that want to be on that committee. That's actually the purpose of my bringing that up. All right. Next, we have item 5, which is the reports for council and comments and activities. AB 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to read that? No.
Section 5 is for disclosures regarding Government Code Section 53232.3D, AKA AB 1234, and Government Code Section 84308, AKA SB 1439, report out. Council comments, requests.
Thank you. Go, hey, Mark, or any council members have anything?
I do have something to report. I did want to just make public that I did participate in, I did attend the Measure U workshop that we held in this room, I think it was the 28th of January. And I also attended the REACH conference, which was an economic development forum in Santa Barbara. It's a great opportunity to hear the kind of support that we get from local organizations in the state to keep the Central Coast economically viable and include short-term and long-range planning.
Okay, I reported on that already. Okay, any others? Okay, I've got some items here. Again, I'll reiterate that. Thank you for that Measure U meeting, bringing up the FireWise grants and the like. There's a couple of shout outs though, and I was at the REACH event also. Great opportunities to help build the economic engine of our entire Central Coast, including Vandenberg and power companies and the like. So it was a good opportunity. It seems like the major focus, or if we're looking out the curve, was space participation and launching and the ability to find talent for that. So a couple things I had. Want to give a shout out to Randy. I don't know if our city manager actually volunteered for a philanthropic endeavor he's on the steering committee for the Santa Ynez Valley Aqueduct Complex, Aquatics Complex, Aqueduct, excuse me, Aquatics. I can't read my own writing, but congratulations. Thank you for stepping up. Another shout out for Raphael. We had a couple of residents and businesses in the community. One you know of well is a Solvang Brew had a fire, and we're trying to get them up and going just as fast as possible. And Raphael, not just the Solvang Brew, but also with the Alisol, we had employed the TUP, which is a temporary use permit. And congratulations for bringing that to the attention, Raphael, and making that happen. I want to thank Olivia for the fire mitigation meeting that she's putting on for tomorrow. And we'll include flood with that as well. If you'd have her debrief her on that, that'd be great. And then one of our own was spotted at the YMCA working hard and improving themselves. Our city clerk was anxious to, and I admire anybody that wants to better themselves in any capacity, whether it be reading a book or taking a walk. They're doing something well for a healthy community. So that's what I had. We'll move on to item 6. Madam Clerk, would you read that for us, please?
Consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of the council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda.
Thank you. I need a motion on this.
No motion, but I would like to pull item D.
So you're making a motion to approve it, except item D. Is that correct?
Yes,
I'll make
that's
that.
exactly what I'm doing.
I'll second that.
Any other? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Okay, we have the ability now to discuss item D, or at your pleasure, we can have a staff report.
Yes, good evening, Council. So before you is to approve an agreement with Rincon Consultants, Inc. to prepare an initial study, prepare a document for the California Environmental Quality Act in compliance in connection with land use application LUP 23-242 Wildwood, with a total amount not to exceed $252,277. City staff did solicit 3 proposals from various firms, SWCA out of San Luis Obispo, DUDEC out of Santa Barbara, and Rincon out of Santa Barbara. Of those 3 proposals, SWCA came back at $205,000, Rincon came back at the $252,000, and DUDEC came in at just under $500,000. All 3 of these firms were part of our 2022 firms were selected for our environmental qualifications. We actually had a list of about 6 firms that was on our list to receive such proposals of work when necessary from city staff. Part of that contract includes a peer review of the applicant's submitted documentations, completion of initial study. That initial study basically outlines what environmental document we have to use to provide public input and discussion. Tribal consultation consistent with AB 52. Notice of preparation, a public scoping meeting. So that's a meeting where we do notice the public, including residents that are within 300 feet. We do a newspaper notice, and we'll notice those who are on our mailing list. And that's a meeting where people can come and discuss what issues the document actually needs to talk about. So that's a part of the public process. And then finally, preparation. We expect a preparation of level of environmental impact report, which includes project alternatives, and then preparation of a final EIR. The reality is this is the next step. This is the public process. For far too long, we have sat there, it's in city staff's hands. The documents that have been submitted meet the requirements to move this project forward. We have difference of opinions, and that's okay, but this is not a decision made by the planning manager. This ultimately needs to be a decision made by the decision makers. And the EIR process is that avenue to make that decision and provide every single resident, every single decision maker, anybody who has a vested interest in this project, to provide them the technical documents and analysis required to either approve or deny the project. No more, no less. So we are requesting that you do approve this contract so we can move this project along. It is expected to take approximately 9 months to a year to complete. We're hoping for it to be a lot sooner, as Rincon has familiarity with the project in terms of working with the city as a part of the 2045 general plan. So they are very familiar with the issues that are ongoing with the project in terms of the basics that were part of the general plan. So they'll be able to move on their feet very quickly so that it gets to the public faster for required 45-day reviews and ultimately a decision made by the decision makers. With that, I'll open up my questions to this council.
Any questions?
I do have one question before anything else. My understanding is that under the legal avenue that the applicant is using to apply for this project is that they can only have up to 5 public meetings discussing the project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are we burning one of our 5 meetings today or no? No, this doesn't count. Would we burn one of our meetings if we were holding this as a discussion item rather than an item in the consent agenda?
No, the preliminary discussion of this consulting contract is not burning one of the 5 hearings on the project.
Okay, so we're discussing the contract.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. I'm just, I just want to make sure that we have that clear.
We're not discussing the contract, the project. We're not committing to any particular course of action with the project, and we're not required to count this as this discussion as one of the 5 project hearings.
Okay, thank you.
But we are able to discuss whether the scope is appropriate for the contract we would enter.
We are, and one of the things I would like to just make sure we clarify with the council based on some of the things that have been said with regard to the scope. You know, there's a scope of work for this contract, which is to go through a CEQA process and prepare environmental documents. The comments are really referring to the scope of the environmental document itself. And I think we need to keep those things separate because there will be a public process to determine, as Rafael said, the scope of the documents themselves and whether this parcel gets included, that parcel doesn't get included, whether we measure impacts at a particular intersection or not at an intersection. That's not part of this decision that's before you right now. In fact, if you look at the scope of work, on page 34 of your packet, task 3 specifically talks about preparing a project description and has bullet points. It says that the project description will include a description of the site and surrounding uses, an explanation of the proposed development and requested land use changes, permits, and approvals, discussion of the project components, including site access, which was a question that came up from the speakers, including grading, which is another question that came up, utility services, duration of construction, any proposed phasing of development, description of design features and/or operational practices, again, a question that came up with the speakers, statement of project descriptions, graphics just depicting the project site location and project components. So those issues that have been raised as concerns are part of creating the project description, which is still a step down the road from here, and not really a question as to whether the scope of work for this contract is correct, because obviously all of those tasks are in the scope of work for this contract.
So I'm glad you brought that up because when we enter into any contractual agreement for services, there's kind of 3 things that matter: the scope of work, the ability to execute, and cost and competitiveness. So let's assume cost and competitiveness is assessed, but scope of work is unclear what defines the work boundary. Is it the description that you just raised, Craig, for, the detail of the work, or is it the boundary based on the acreage and the APN numbers identified.
The acreage and the APN numbers are in a paragraph of the Rincon proposal cited headline Project Understanding. It's not the binding statement of this is the four corners of what we are being hired to study. They're being hired to prepare a legally adequate CEQA document. And that legally adequate CEQA document has to go through a process. The proposal lists a number of tasks to get through that process, but I would again refer back to task 3, which is preparing the project description. And a project description, as would be legally adequate under CEQA, describes the whole of an action. And so one speaker referred to, well, they're not going to study traffic impacts at intersections. Well, they are if the intersections are going to be impacted. Another speaker said they wouldn't necessarily be studying the easement, any impacts on the easement property. They would if there are going to be environmental impacts on that property. That's what's provided for in task 3. So I want to emphasize that, as you all know, going through a development proposal is a process. There are a number of ministerial steps in that process before you get to the detail of whether or not to approve a project, one of which is doing CEQA, which is required by state law, and has a number of very detailed regulations that tell us what we have to do, which are all available to the public. But the bigger part of that is hiring a consultant to deliver a legally adequate CEQA document. And that includes some of the concerns that have been raised tonight, and they're spelled out in the scope of work document.
And then so this is great, that as from your perspective, there's another bit of language that city manager is given some leeway, remember the exact phrasing, the ability to modify the scope of the agreement or make adjustments to the work performance or the work scope along the way. So that would be the first milestone where city manager would have an opportunity to say something needs to be added.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And as well, there's another provision in the agreement that notes that it may be that additional engineering, for example, is needed based on what comes out of the peer review of these studies. And if that's true, we may have to order additional technical studies or additional technical services. And that's a normal part of any CEQA process. But you know, the whole foundation of an EIR or a negative deck, whatever happens in this particular case, is getting a scope done. The scope is done, as Raphael said, through a public meeting where folks get to come in and comment on what they think the scope of the environmental document should be, so it's not done in any kind of staff setting. Then the next part of it is to take that scope and do a project description, which includes all of these factors that are listed specifically in task 3, which then becomes a draft EIR or draft mitigated neg deck, which the public again gets to comment on. So we are really at this kind of just setup stage, and what we have before you is a contract that says prepare a legally adequate CEQA document. And folks will get to comment throughout the process as to whether they think it's a legally adequate CEQA document. By my count, at least 3 times there will be public comment processes where all of these concerns can be raised if they're not covered in the CEQA document.
Thank you.
How will they be noticed of these items that are coming up? Is that public or?
So the noticing for a CEQA document is prescribed by state law. So again, if it's a mitigated negative deck, it follows newspaper notice plus a notification of residents within 300 feet. City staff has taken the initiative of being transparent and providing a email list the residents can sign up. It's free. Every time we've received a submittal, we've pushed things out. Every time we've said it's been rejected or needs tweaking, we've pushed information out. We've utilized this vehicle to provide information. So we would utilize that mailing list to send out, to let people know of the scoping meeting, to let people know of the environmental documents and when they are available. These documents will be published online on our website once they are completed. The scoping meeting is a public hearing, so it will be myself, the consultant would be there. And again, the purpose of that scoping meeting is to really frame the project description. I've done enough of these EIRs to know that things do come up that we don't think about as a part of the EIR process, and because of the public scoping meeting, and we take note of that. And the environmental consultant does the work based on the scoping of the meeting. And of course, there are some comments that don't necessarily pertain to the scoping meeting, as if they're pro the project or they're against the project. It doesn't matter. It's part of the public hearing process. If it's an EIR, it's a 45-day review. The notices go out. EIR gets published. We actually have to have a hard copy available at our offices. We provide a copy available at the library. So this is a part of the typical public disclosure process. This is the planning process. Let's not subvert the planning process. And that's what essentially we're asking this evening, is to go forward with the CEQA process, which is the true public disclosure document.
Is this vendor the one that runs those scope meetings?
Yes, RenCon will typically run the meeting along with city staff. City staff is there. We're taking copious notes. So it's very much a joint effort. The project management that's involved in the scoping, there is a fee that's added to the applicant for city staff's time, and that's based on a deposit. It's not a flat fee, so we're counting our time. And that's not just my time. That's the city engineer's time. That's legal. That's utilities, just to make sure everything that is in the document is fact-based, based on our adopted documents, based on what the future, based on what the general plan tells us. This is your disclosure document.
And this is done in advance of the actual reports being produced?
In terms of, yes. Yes.
If it's engineering needed,
Correct.
They would have to do that.
Correct. So that's part of the peer review section, is to go through it and say, hey, we got enough information to adequately analyze the traffic. Or no, we don't have enough information, to which then, if we don't have enough information, we do go back to the applicant and say, we need additional information, and we ask for that to be produced, and they provide. So that's how this process works. And then as soon as we get that document and we give it to if we need any additional documents, we better believe, again, as a part of transparency, we put it on our website and we let people know new documents available in terms of technical study.
Okay, then finally on page 34, task 4, it has for tribal consultation assistance. I assume, and this is why I'm asking the question, I don't want to assume, that would include the irrigation or the aqueduct.
Yeah, the tribal consultation, actually, it goes to the state. We get a list of various stations that want responses. Typically, the Sanias Chumash is the main nation that responds to. We do a consult, and that consult basically is a meeting with ourselves and the EIR consultant to go over what they want to see analyzed in the EIR. We provide the documents the unredacted documents that we have available, we provide to them. And they also provide input very similar to what they did in our general plan. They actually provide input on mitigation measures and some of the language that we use. So it is very much a working relationship with our First Nations when it comes to tribal consultation. And that is the epitome of AB 52.
Okay, so I think that would satisfy the aqueduct concern that was brought up earlier. Any other questions?
And just to make sure, this is all running on the applicant is paying for all of this, right?
Yes, that is correct. So the applicant pays the fee for the EIR consultant. The city staff has chosen the EIR consultant. The applicant had no say into who we chose. We did let the applicant know of the cost parameters. And there were times where the applicant asked us to sharpen our pencils, and we said no. So.
Okay, and I imagine that the quote would change if the scope of work changes, because I can see this, becoming a bigger report than it is going to be here. So I want to make sure that we can ask for more information, or
Once you peel back a lot of the comments, and I understand, the sheer amount of emotion that goes into this project. Once you peel all that back, it just mirrors a typical project. And so what's scoped before you by Rincon is a very similar trajectory for most projects of this size. As a matter of fact, it's probably more for this project size. But to answer your question, very much yes. So if we do need additional documents that causes a change in scope, we will approach the applicant of that, and the applicant will need to pay up.
Okay, and then just one more question, because there are differences on opinion of whether legally the applicant is entitled to do the project. Is that something that is going to be answered with this study, or is that a whole other matter altogether?
Councilmember, you're referring to the access?
Yes, because there is a
easement
question of
issue?
whether they can use or
Yeah.
not the easement. Yeah.
That question is a perfectly valid question for folks to raise. It is a land use question. It is not a CEQA question. So in terms of, is this document going to solve that issue, this CEQA document? No. Does it have to be resolved before it becomes the project comes for consideration? Sure. If people say the project can't be built the way it's proposed to be built, that has to be resolved. That'll be up to the applicant to submit documentation that resolves that issue. It's not a CEQA issue. And one of the things I want to emphasize, I always emphasize about the CEQA process is in terms of litigation. You know, especially with these builder's remedy projects, CEQA is still required, and it's one of the ways that cities still have a little bit of local control to be able to evaluate the impacts of projects and become informed. We would get sued if we didn't do it. We have to do it. And we would get sued if we do it wrong. And so we have to make sure we do it wrong, do it correctly. We don't do it wrong. And one of the ways you do it is by hiring a company like Rincon, for example, that has done a lot of this. They're known throughout the state. They know what they're proposing for. And so in terms of the contract price inflating or going down, they know the project that they proposed for, and they're pretty sure they understand the amount of work it will take to get it done. I've worked with Rincon many, many times, so I know, and Rafael I'm sure has too. We know that it's a professional outfit that can get this work done, and that the city can then rely on the information to do the hard thing, which is to make the decision based on the information that's provided in the CEQA document. But the process will be done correctly in a way that protects the city, protects the applicant, but also protects the public's right to participate in the CEQA process.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I had a follow-up question with that. So do we have a hold harmless agreement in this contract with Rincon? Hold harmless?
No. There's not a hold harmless. The liability really is on the developer's part. We will have an agreement with the developer to indemnify the city for any liability that arises out of a decision approving a project.
Okay. And any other questions? Rafael, anything else you wish to share?
No, not at this time.
Oh, could I just say one more,
Please.
Mayor? You know, there was a comment about how staff and the city attorney might at some point get to a point where, because the applicant had spent so much money, tell the council or the planning commission that the project had to be approved. And I just want to assure you that that's not a consideration from staff's perspective. We all have done these projects before. I have been involved in many, many projects where applicants have spent a lot more money than this is proposed to be and had their projects denied because that was the decision. So the applicant's cost is just part of the deal, and they understand that, and it doesn't have any bearing as to whether the project gets approved. Nothing in the CEQA process is ever a prejudgment on the project. CEQA is an informational process.
So they'd have to go through this project if it was 10 units or 100?
Yeah.
It'd be still going through the same?
And somebody would have to pay for that process if we weren't taking the
It'd
money
be their
from
development
the
cost,
applicant.
understand.
It only makes sense to take it from the developer.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I'll make, no, I'll make an emotion that we approve.
Point of order, please. Point of order, Mr. Mayor? Yes. Point of order?
Point of order only.
Point of order.
This item was withdrawn from the consent. It's not on the agenda for discussion or decision. And I don't see how you can make a decision on this contract having not put it on the agenda for a debate and decision, not allowing a public comment, totally improper and out of the statutory authority of the council.
Well, I'll let our legal counsel determine that.
The item is properly on the agenda, it was on the consent calendar. The public comment was taken for the item at length, and then a member of the council asked to have it be pulled for discussion. That does not create any additional public comment or public debate portion. The matter's properly before the city council for decision.
Thank you.
You don't have to allow points of order from this.
You have, make,
It may be that the council mayor, the city attorney, or the acting city attorney believes that it's still on the agenda for consent, but it's not. It was dropped off of the consent agenda.
yeah, that point of order has been discussed. That point of order is already been discussed.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
You're excused. We've settled that issue with regards to whether or not it's legitimate to do this activity by our legal counsel. So, thank you, Al. First of all, I don't even have a second on it. So if you'd, please, I don't even have a second on this item yet. So I'd like you to please take your seat. Let us continue with our meeting. Thank you. I have a first for approval of this contract and contract only. Is there a second?
I will second it.
It's been moved and seconded properly for item 6D. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
No.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item 7. There are no public hearings, so we'll go straight to number 8.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, Olivia is here to discuss 8C, and she has about an hour drive.
Oh,
So I'd like to ask if we could take that next, please.
I'm amenable to that. How about the rest of us?
That's fine.
Thank you. If Olivia's here,
Thank-
let's go to item 8C, please.
She is in the other room. She's coming now.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Our community prides itself on being a small town, and neighbors know each other by name, and we feel welcomed and safe. And we have a low amount of violent crimes that have occurred, and yet there is a consideration. Consider these events. A visitor from overseas had her wallet stolen with thousands of dollars, as well as her passport. And although she was able to recover it, this caused significant distress and could have ruined our reputation as a tourist destination. Our Solvang bathrooms have had vandalism that have cost the city $30,000 in repairs. Teens in the city at times have vandalized our water facilities. And fuel has been siphoned from vehicles and cars have been vandalized in our parking facilities. These incidents were not violent crimes, but they were crimes of opportunity. And these could have potentially been prevented had we had more updated city infrastructure. So while we want to continue to retain a small town charm of a welcoming city, city staff today is seeking direction about an expansion and upgrades to its video surveillance systems. And these include upgrading its systems to artificially intelligence-enabled systems and cloud-based systems. And city staff is also seeking guidance on comprehensive policy, developing a policy for any video surveillance system and the appropriate use. So the city of Solvang faces a few unique challenges. One is, of course, the single ingress road. Two, it's its water treatment and critical facilities that require surveillance. And three, it's an extreme quantity of visitors that could benefit as well from improved surveillance. Our current limitations are namely that the systems that we have are limited. We have cameras that require manual video review. So when incidents have happened, we have had to look through the cameras and the old school way, if you will, go through the video and see roughly what time did the crime occur, and see whether or not we had the right angle on the cameras, with very limited ability to move it or review the footage. This footage is blurry, and the video is stored locally. So it's local storage, and sharing capabilities of the footage is difficult with law enforcement. Several water wells have basic recording, but lack the advanced features. So what we're proposing is, or what are some considerations, rather, is AI-enabled systems. So these AI-enabled systems, basically, you put in the information that you're looking for, they're capturing data, and if there's a report of a crime from a person in a hat, you put in, individual with a hat, they think they had a green shirt, and then all of the images and that data will come up. It could be for an individual, it could be for a vehicle. You could include proactive notifications. So if you're looking for a particular individual or vehicle and it's not coming up, you can still leave the proactive notification for a while so that it'll ping you when it picks something up. It's cloud-based, so you're not doing the local storage. Some type of video technology that could be considered includes license plate readers at entry and exit points, a camera with Wi-Fi connectivity, and drone cameras. Additionally, some of these systems could integrate with systems that already exist. The Santa Barbara County Sheriffs, which we subcontract with, already has one of these license plate readers on Highway 246. In addition to seeking direction about upgrades and expansion, potentially, of the video technology, staff is seeking direction about a policy that balances the need for security with legal and ethical requirements surrounding privacy, transparency, and data protection. The agenda packet includes the San Francisco Port Surveillance Policy and guidance from the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, which is our risk management CJPIA, and recommendations from CJPIA for risk mitigation are to include guidance that's very clear about the purpose with a focus on privacy protection, a legal framework and legal compliance, camera placement and monitoring practices, clear protocols for data access, retention, which include staff training requirements, incident handling and reporting procedures, transparent public communication and stakeholder engagement, including clear signage and notifications, clarifying expectations of surveillance capabilities, and regular policy review and updates. So the three options for your council to consider providing direction on include a full scope evaluation on this technology with detailed assessment of locations and needs, cost estimation and vendor evaluation, integration planning with the existing systems that we already have, and timeline and phasing recommendations. Or council could provide direction to pilot a particular alternative and a particular program in a targeted area, evaluate the effectiveness and community response, and gather data for full implementation. So try something out, see if it works. If it doesn't work, we don't have to expand it. Or status quo, maintain the technology that exists, acknowledging the limitations and risks, and consider a future path. Next steps include council direction on the preferred implementation, approval to proceed with detailed cost analysis if that's the direction you move, and authorization to develop a comprehensive surveillance policy, and direction on stakeholder engagement process. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Did you have a add-on?
I was going to point out, and I didn't think about it until Olivia was talking, but improved public safety is high on the list of priorities that the council adopted, goals last year. A lot of times, we first think about actual bodies, actual cops on the street. This is a far less expensive way to do that. You provide the observation abilities, and again, if something happens, as Olivia pointed out, the newer technologies allow us to look for a guy in a red shirt or somebody wearing short pants. I mean, it's very advanced. It's amazing. And many jurisdictions are doing this. Previous administration installed video cameras in and around City Hall. It doesn't appear that they ever approached council about any kind of guidance about it. There definitely is no policy. And so that, as Olivia and I were talking about, ways to improve security and safety in the community. She pointed out a couple of incidents. We had the incident year before last during YOLOFest where one of our local homeless residents was arrested for damaging the lights on the trees. Unfortunately, there was only video from one Ring doorbell at one of the businesses, so he was only convicted of one of, I think, was 20 or so, 25 trees that were damaged. If we had more cameras available, he could have been prosecuted for all of the crimes. So, I mean, there's a lot of advantages to this. I just wanted to add a couple of things. Like I said, it is in alignment with council goals, so we're looking for some direction on how to proceed.
Thank you. Any questions?
Do we have an estimate of how much this is going to cost, or is that something that we're still going to look at?
That would depend on, so that's what we're seeking direction on, whether how much we want to research this. We did look into some costs, but it's really speculative whether we decide to place 33 cameras, 5 cameras, 10 cameras. It really depends on the scope. And then they're all slightly different types of contracts. So some of them are 5-year contracts, 10-year contracts. It depends on what kind of cameras you use. So once we started going down that rabbit hole, we decided it might be better to find out if
All
that's
right.
where you want to go.
I understand.
How old are the cameras that we have?
How old? 5 or 6 years, I believe.
Okay, and what locations are they?
They're around City Hall.
Just City Hall here?
Yeah.
Okay. And if there was an incident on the middle of the day and Saturday, who would be looking at that?
Well, there was an incident on a Sunday night here, and yours truly looked through several hours of video and were unable to find anything.
No, I meant, if she was mentioning that you could do it in real time, if you had a description of somebody, a Yankees hat and tennis shoes, you could pick somebody out from that, but you'd have to be looking at it in real time, I assume.
That's the beauty of AI, is that you have a computer looking through the footage for the indicators that you're looking for.
I guess what I'm saying is we're not staffed on the weekend for somebody to make that call to utilize a resource that we might not be able to utilize.
So a couple of thoughts about that. One is there's a difference between active, passive, and hybrid surveillance. And so the policy recommendation includes to be very specific about what the public can expect, whether somebody's going to be constantly looking at it, whether it's going to be passive and it's only going to be as incidents come up, or whether it's a hybrid. Sometimes the individuals with clearance will look through it if they're looking for something in particular. And so that would be hybrid. And so that's part of the policy recommendation that would be decided. But in terms of the AI, if there was, say, a Friday night incident, Friday afternoon incident, staff is here, they say, hey, this is coming up, we're working closely with law enforcement, because they're a contract police department. You can put in those indicators, and if you get a ping, it will email whoever you have authorized to email. So it could be, most likely, in this case, City Manager Murphy, and he would get a ping on Saturday morning saying, hey, here's what's come up. Okay. And he will take a look at it right away.
So I think, Olivia, we need to think through, I would characterize that as how do we operationalize the tool? Mm-hmm. Because we need a response and a reaction. And if we aren't, for the examples you made, if we aren't integrating or coordinating with sheriff, well, we have all the data, but we can't do anything about it, right? We got a guy who's going to leave town in 5 minutes or less, right, after he's stolen somebody's wallet, and we have no operational structure to have responded to that, even though the data's all there for us, and a notification or an email's gone out. If we don't have the response structure, it won't become effective. So if here's the thing that I see with these kinds of tools and technologies, you can have a wide spectrum of how they get deployed and implemented. It can be a very tactical use case, and it can still be very effective, or you can, deploy something that ends up being highly sophisticated, broad range of use cases that we're covering, and ends up being a strategic way to keep the community safe, proactive in our responsiveness, and, covering everything from safety to protecting us from slip and falls, right? It's all kinds of use cases here, or even traffic control. So there's many ways to do this, but for probably what would be a limited budget and limited ability to operationalize, we probably want to start with really targeted use cases and understand how we benefit and wrap a policy around that. Let me explain what I mean. I would advocate for things like this because the technology is so sophisticated and it's actually not very expensive. But let's be really surgical about where we apply it. One great use case that I would say, let's take one that we know we can benefit on, like the vandalism in the bathrooms. That happens very frequently. And it can be a prohibitor when, the bad guys see the cameras on the way in, or, they know, and we publicize that it's going to be surveilled, then it just naturally diminishes. Mm-hmm. And that's a use case that, on the weekends, we know it's going to be high volume. Seasonally, we know it's going to be high volume. You can build an operational model around it. And if we're good at that, then we consider like the next use case and the next use case and figure out how we evolve the technology. It's got to be operationalized, coordinated with a response capability and a cost justification that says, hey, we can, kind of benefit from this. Now, the other thing is, I didn't know until today that that there are, and maybe we don't want to advertise this, but that there are certain capabilities on 246. So we need to also find ways to integrate or interlock, maybe not integrate, but interlock with the response processes for what the sheriff's office is doing. That way we don't overspend or we don't duplicate, right, what we're monitoring. Okay, but I would advocate for this if we're smart about it, because the leverage of these tools in city environments is phenomenal across the board. But we just be selective about the use case and start with, very targeted, because sometimes until public gets familiar with what the technology is really doing for them, anything AI can have a skepticism wrapped around it. And a crawl, walk, run might get us to where we can show benefit over time. Does that make sense?
There's a couple of other issues, too. I mean, one of them is put up a sign that says surveillance, even if there's no camera, and see if it makes a difference.
With a camera in the picture.
Yeah, or even put a fake camera up there. I mean,
So-
it costs you $10 to put a fake camera up there.
I've had the opportunity to have this conversation many times with CJPIA. They warn against it because in case something does happen and don't actually have the capability for that video, they will say,
Oops.
I believed that I was safe and under surveillance because of X, Y, and Z.
Thank you. I never thought about that part of it. The issue with this thing that bothers me is, first off, I don't know what you do with a license plate reader. I mean, we have millions of visitors. And what do you do with a license plate reader? We cannot write tickets from a camera showing them going too fast. We don't have the legal capability to do that. Actually, I think it's against the law in the state of California. There's only 5 cities, I think, right now that are trying to do that under California law. The issues of all of this are, where do you put them? Where do you start? Are you going to only do the downtown area? Are you going to do near the schools? Are you going to do near the wells? Where would it all go? These are all, you're talking about full scope, cost, vendors, all this kind of stuff. We don't even know where we would like to, I don't know where we'd like to start. Let me put it that way. I don't know what you guys know. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. You've given us a scope this big, and my poor little mind can think about this much of it. So I think I would like to see from staff a couple of specific options. Locations, how many cameras, what type, what would they cost? Give us 2 or 3 before we can even say, yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thinks it's a good idea to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on surveillance until something awful happens, and then everybody goes, oh my God, we should have had a camera. So that being said, I think it would be helpful to come back with a few options, see how much it costs, see what capabilities it has, and then, it'll be easier to make a decision. But yes, I'm very much for, having the tools to look at incidents. Of course, it's not going to prevent everything. Many people are never going to get prosecuted unless there's a cop right there catching them on the act, but it is helpful in the case it happens, and it has been helpful to have cameras or surveillance when something does happen. That being said, AI is scary, but I don't see anybody throwing their iPhone on the trash because of it. So
I was going to point out that's really the purpose, going back to Mr. Infante's comments, that's really the purpose of why we brought this forward. We wanted to make sure there wasn't this, skin crawling, Big Brother's watching kind of reaction, either from you or from the community. I mean, they're pretty ubiquitous now, cameras in general. And so, but again, it's a policy matter. And if I've learned nothing else in my 20 plus years in public service, never get out ahead of your governing board body, because that gets you in trouble. So I just wanted, ask Olivia, as she and I were investigating this and talking about it and getting kind of excited about the opportunities and the possibilities, that hey, we probably should have council weigh in on this. Is this something they want us to go through and look at and provide some options, coordinate with the sheriff's department, and come up with a plan. So that's, again, I said that's the main reason we're here tonight.
Thank you. I would disagree with Councilmember Arona. I think we should.
Which one?
Elizabeth Arona. I think that everybody should know that there's a license plate reader on the end of town, and maybe we won't have. Prevention is also knowledge of knowing that you might get caught. So, but I think what we're saying is that we'd like to come up with 1 or 2 scenarios of targeted priority targeted areas, and maybe a wider case use from that will give us a minimum, and then next step. And then as far as policies, I think the JPIA policy would be a good template to draw from. I don't know if you read the others, but that was the one I liked the best as far as policy programs. Anything else?
Well, I know, I'm going to use your favorite term. I just want to say ditto. I don't know what everyone has said.
Good. All right. Thank you very
Do we
much.
need to give some direction, ask them to come back with a couple use cases and,
Was it? Yeah, I'm sorry, is that okay?
oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
do we have any public
bad.
comment on this item? Anything in Zoom? Okay. There is none showing up, so I think if you came up with those scenarios.
We have clear direction, yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And that's what you wanted today, right? Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to item 8A. Could you read that for us, please?
Discussion and possible action to approve mid-year budget adjustments.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, or good morning.
More
Good
coffee.
evening, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. Tonight before you, you have a group of budget adjustments. Staff is asking for your approval. If you do not approve them, staff has to do their due diligence on making sure that each fund does not go over, have expenses over revenue. And budget adjustments true up the cost, the budget projections from July through December. And then we take those adjustments and do our best guess scenario from January to June. And at the end of June, then we'll bring a budget to actual to council. It's predicted right now with the increase in TOT revenue and interest revenue, and with the expense adjustments, that the general fund will increase the fund balance at the end of the year, providing everything stays status quo, which usually doesn't happen. But general fund is looking at $693,577 increase to the fund balance. And Measure U, with the Solvang Park adjustments, it's looking like the fund balance for Measure U will decrease $116,000. And water will decrease $138,821, and wastewater will increase $32,000, and transit will increase $5,500. And you'll have impact fees, traffic safety, gas tax, local trans, Measure A, skip mesa, and vehicle pool. Those are all restricted funds. And all of those will increase in the fund balance based on the total budget adjustments by fund on page 59, except for the gas tax will decrease 13,123. I did do a list of revenue and expenses, and I took those revenue and expenses, then did a net budget adjustment. And under administration, the totals are actually right on the fund adjustment, but I did somehow remove the legal fees for South Coast Properties, which is a budget adjustment for $160,000 for legal fees. On the general fund, yes. So the fund balance increase can be used to support the council goals too as well, or whatever you see fit.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? Mark?
She's calling me out because I sat down with her for an hour and went through all of this to understand it. No questions.
Good.
Thank you, Wendy.
So it worked.
I have one comment. that
Yes.
I'd like to see if we can modify. On page 65, let me make sure I got the. We have merchant fees, credit card fees.
Yes.
Well, are we not charging?
We are, but
For-
we are not recapturing all the costs for that. We get 2.25%, and it costs us 4%. And the more people use their credit cards, the more processing fees we have to pay. But we do capture some of those costs, just not all of those costs.
Okay, so how do we modify that to break even?
We actually have a fee study coming forward, and that fee study will address those costs.
I mean, it's a convenience, but I don't care to pay for somebody's airline miles, which is where that fee goes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had. Anything else? Public comment on this item? Anybody in Zoom? Anybody in the room? Anybody awake? Okay. So you're looking for our approval of your adjustments that you have here for mid-year?
As presented, yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Sorry, Wendy, as presented, but you mentioned there was a modification.
Yeah, but in the
Oh, it's in the blue-
in the
blue-
budget
blue line.
adjustment
Yeah, yeah, okay.
worksheets
Thank
that
you.
we sign off on, that 160,000 is included in there.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 2024 to 2025.
I have a first, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second for approval of the mid-year budget adjustments as discussed. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Rona?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Now we get to go to item 8B for our very own Jenny McClure.
May I read?
Yes, please. Read the item.
Discussion and possible action to approve the agreement with Melton Design Group, MDG, for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan in the amount of $210,825 with a 10% contingency of $21,085 for a total amount not to exceed $231,910 for the term February 10, 2025 through December 31st, 2026, and authorize the mayor to execute on behalf of the city and approve any necessary budget adjustments.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Okay, good evening, council and members of the public. Jenny McClure, your Parks and Recreation Director. So the City of Solvang solicited proposals for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and 7 proposals were received. The proposals were reviewed based on the following criteria: price, qualifications and experience, proposed services, and resources. A comprehensive evaluation was conducted by a selection committee, which included city staff, and the following firms submitted proposals: Melton Design Group, $210,825. Blue Point Planning, $173,133. KTUA, $258,316. Barry Dunn, $199,071. Gates and Associates, $375,981. Conservation Technics, $134,120, and SWA, $84,468. The evaluation process was conducted using a scoring system, and from there, the top 3 firms were interviewed by city staff. The 3 firms that we interviewed were Melton Design Group, Blue Point Planning, and KTUA. After careful consideration, the selection committee felt that Melton Design Group, their proposal offers the best value to the city in terms of price, expertise, offerings, and ability to deliver the required services. Some of the attributes that set MDG apart from the competitors were their local office in Santa Barbara, and they included an economic assessment in their scope of work. So given their strong qualifications and relevant experience, successful past collaboration with other cities in California, MDG is well positioned to execute the project efficiently, and staff recommends to approve the agreement with MDG. Alternatives, the council could select another firm, and the fiscal impact, although the cost is more than originally anticipated, this project was included in the Measure U budget, and a budget adjustment of $156,910 is needed. We do have the CEO, Greg Melton, here from Melton Design Group in attendance, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. I think we'll go to public comment if there is any. No public comment, anybody on Zoom?
We come to us first usually.
Yeah, well, it's out of order then. Hey,
Well, it's that, that herding cats. She displays the cats this time. It's a good thing we got that
let's have our
budget
discussion,
access,
but
isn't it?
go ahead. Anybody got questions?
Yeah, I do have a question regarding the choice of consultant. This is a project that I'm really, really excited about. I know that, studies like this, cost significant, but, $200,000 buys a very, very nice brand new playground. So I'd like to know why this firm was chosen, what benefit they're getting to the city. Because I would rather I would rather have a brand new calisthenics park than another study sitting in our shelves.
I see your point. Some of the other companies that did put a proposal in, you see like the $84,000, they did not.
I like that.
Right. They did not kind of deliver on what we were asking for, and they missed the scope of work pretty dramatically.
Okay.
And what it boils down to, obviously, there's some that were more expensive, some that were less expensive. The least expensive one clearly did not understand the project. They thought it would only take 6 months. This is closer to 12 to 14-month project. And as was pointed out, Melton Group has experience. I've actually worked with him when I was in Oroville. So I am familiar with his work, and it is quality work. I am very comfortable if the council gives approval in working with him. I know he will deliver. He is not one of those consultants that spends every penny if it's awarded. He is very conscientious and doesn't take advantage of the situation. He does deliver excellent quality work, and I'm excited about the opportunity to work with him. He just recently actually opened a Santa Barbara office, so it's convenient timing for him to be able to do this for us. It is a lot of money, understood, but it's not out of, it's not out of, it's not like he's way high or way low than anybody else. So, I mean, it's right in that range. And compared to the other ones that the committee, employee committee looked at, he had the best proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Couple questions I had. As part of this proposal, will they help us finding any grants or abilities to fund new endeavors?
They do, and that is part of their economic assessment. And that is what sets them apart from all the competitors. None of the other proposals provided that.
Okay. And for Parks and Recreation, is it just physical assets, or is he going to look into other non-tangibles or programs that we offer?
Yeah, all of the above.
And I don't remember, it's been a while since I read the staff report, but our existing plan is over 20 years old.
Correct.
We need to have something more current in order to be able to apply for grants. There are, things that we're doing now that they didn't do 20 years ago. One of the drivers in this whole conversation was the controversy over the pickleball courts here not too long ago. And how many do we need? Is it prudent to maybe invest in more than we need and be able to set up for, some kind of a competition or tournament? There's a lot of thought about Solvang Park and what the future of that looks like for the Yule Fest celebration. How can we do something that is more resilient? I don't know if you've been out there lately, but it looks like a lot of dirt. And that's kind of a consequence of the heavy Yule Fest celebrations we've had. So there's a lot of thought that's going into this. And like I said, I've worked with Greg before, and he's very creative in finding solutions for us.
Well, like you said, the Solvang Park is, as we say, less than the most attractive at this point in time. And do we want to wait 14 months before we do something different or change that? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't like how it looks now. And so go ahead.
We are soliciting bids right now to resod, but we're not trying to put, we're not going to be putting hardscapes in areas where we want to. We're going to wait for the master plan to come back before we make any significant changes.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, let's come to a conclusion.
I'll move that we accept the contract, approve the contract, excuse me.
8B. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded for the approval of item 8B, contract with Melton Design Group for our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Infante.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mayor-
And I'm going to say no. I just struggle with the cost. I wish we could understand the scope a little better. No.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you very much, Jenny. That concludes our agenda items. Are there any comments from our illustrious team?
I'd like to make one other comment real quick. In case you were not informed, Lompoc went back and passed the wine BID. So they decided we were all right and they should join us. So it's now official in Lompoc as well.
That's a good outcome.
Good to know.
Tax
Anything
the winos.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much. A happy Valentine's Day to all of you. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you. We're adjourned at 8:24.